Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And Jeff, thank you for your wonderful work on this poster, which I feel very privileged to have seen before all these people in the room. But we'll give you a chance to talk about that in just a minute. I want to start off by kind of contextualizing what we're all doing here, because this theater, which dates back to 1932, has been a really important access point for cultural experiences across multiple generations. And we hear a lot of stories from people about seeing a movie and having this transportive experience and then realizing, hey, maybe this is something I can do, and becoming creative people themselves. What was that moment for you? Not necessarily movie centric, but for the arts, where you saw something and you realized not only was this impactful, but it was something that you could be a part of yourself.
Uh, you know, pardon me. It's wonderful to be here. So I'm really thrilled, and I was very excited to work on this special project as far as doing the posters. Uh, I would have to say that I became aware of the power of storytelling and how powerful they were. When I was younger, we had two small theaters in York, Pennsylvania, that I would go to. I was just upstairs in a green room, and they had a couple James Bond posters. But James Bond movies, Goldfinger, that was very powerful. I would go with my father to see films like that, or going to the outdoor movie theater. I recall saw a John Wayne film, North to Alaska, or there was a movie. Maybe this was another John Wayne, Hatari, uh, which took place in South Africa. But the idea to be able to go to see something, a story that would go on for at least an hour and a half, 2 hours, and that you were united. You were sharing that experience with your family or with friends. I think that's what makes seeing a film, experiencing theater special.
And what about the fine art space? What was a seminal moment for you? Was it a museum encounter? Was it seeing an artist at work that really was a turning point in terms of you realizing what was possible for the discipline?
Growing up in New York, there were different theatrical events that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the parades that we would have, where it seemed, at that time when we didn't, have all the different television channels, or we didn't have all the different ways to gather. Parades, I think, really had kind of a usefulness to them. So I remember the parades in New York. I was always moved, excited by that. But I would have to say a moment would have been I have an aunt that lived in Philadelphia, and she would invite me to come to Philadelphia, and she took me on the top of City Hall, where they have the statue of William Penn. And the statue's about 37 feet tall. It's made out of bronze. Alexander Milheim Calder built the piece, Alexander Calder's grandfather. And it's a fantastically powerful work. And on top of City Hall, Eric, it's up probably about, I'm estimating, maybe about 50 stories. At one time, you couldn't build any higher than the top of William Penn. Today, they are building higher. But when you would go up, you could go right to the base of the sculpture, and you would look up and you'd be so moved by the awe and wonderment of this big, colossal bronze sculpture, like a Colossus of Rhodes, really like a wonder, especially to myself as a small child. But then at the same moment, those feelings of that power of that sculpture, but then looking out over Philadelphia and feeling a communal sense of, oh, that's where Betsy Ross knitted the flag. And oh, there's Independence Hall. And so to also feel this collectiveness. So the power of the self really being moved by feelings and emotions that art can make you feel, but then the connection to that within a larger community that we all can transcend, we all can become.
Yeah, off of that, I mean, one of the striking things about your work over the years is that it is very inviting, it is very accessible. It doesn't always feel like you need to know everything that came before or have a degree in art history to grasp every nuance of what it is you're trying to get across, which is a really wonderful thing to be able to achieve. And sometimes in this theater we talk about how it's important to make room for both populism and for other types of artistry that may be more adventurous or challenging to people. And I'm curious about the moment that you started coming out with the avant-garde space being where it was, and a real kind of radical energy around that. What your relationship was early on as an artist to the audiences, the viewers that you wanted to reach, and how big you imagined it could grow.
I would have to say I always wanted to be part of a group. So I was somewhat of a loner growing up. My friends, when I was in high school, they really didn't have interest in the things that I was thinking about. I was thinking more abstractly, thinking about philosophy and psychology. And so I felt somewhat a little alienated. But when I went to art school, all of a sudden I was with people that had mutual interests. And so the idea to be part of the avant-garde, where you could be part of a group where you could transform and change your life, and you could also affect the lives of the larger community. So I started off very involved in kind of personal iconography. And in personal iconography, you learn how to affect your own feelings and emotions. And, it's like creating an iconography or like an alphabet that you can start to create things that are communicating, but it's doing it through feelings and sensations. And so I started to realize that I could control the intensity of those sensations, the artificial quality of them. And so at a certain point, I wanted to kind of break away from a fetishism of just personal iconography, dealing with kind of a subjective self, and to start to think more objectively, where I was interested in the communication with the viewer. I was making work for myself. I always have, I do today. But at the same time, I probably more than ever also involved with communicating with the audience, the desire to serve, to be able to, transcend and feel my own ability, the essence of my potential, but to also be able to communicate to the viewer whatever interests they have that to excite them, stimulate them, so that they also feel the essence of their own potential.
Yeah, you tell a great story about meeting Salvador Dali when you were quite young, and of course Dali was drawing heavily on all these amazing surrealist concepts. Your work is not exactly that; it's its own thing. So I'm curious what it was about Dali's aesthetics that were so impactful for you, even as you were sort of carving your own identity.
I think his generosity. I was 19, and he invited me. I called him up. I heard that he lived at the St. Regis Hotel half the year, and I called the hotel, and they put me through to him. And he was generous enough to say, "Look, if you want to meet me, come to New York next weekend, and at 12 o'clock I'll meet you in the lobby." And exactly at 12 o'clock, I mean exactly, the elevator door opened, and there he was in the lobby with his big buffalo fur cape and his coat, big fur coat, and diamond tie tack pins and silver cane. And but he told me that he had to meet a French journalist, a female journalist, and that if I wanted to meet him at the Knoedler Gallery, I was welcome to join him there. And so I told him that I'll be there. And again, the generosity of inviting this kid from Pennsylvania to come to Nodler to see a show, an exhibition that he put together. Actually, there were two shows. One was a show of surrealism that he organized, and one was of his own work. And so I went to Nodler, and Dolly was there, and he was very excited, showing this female journalist around. She was very tall. She also had kind of a big fur coat on. But he was so excited. I recall underneath these art works that were on the wall, he was pointing them out and kind of darting around, really excited. It wasn't until years later that I realized that was Amanda Lear. And so this was his muse. And so he was so excited to have her there. And he had an exhibition of his work. So I was looking at his work, and he came in, and he asked if I wanted to photograph him, and I told him, of course, yes. And I had a big Pentax camera, and I'm there kind of fudging it around, trying to get everything into focus, and he was putting his mustache up, and, you know, he told me, look, kid, I can't hold this pose all day. But so I shot the photograph, and I keep that photograph in my office and really enjoy it. But the generosity, and you know, if I think back over my life so far as an artist, it really comes to, you know, trying to perform at your highest level, to accept who you are. I accepted who I am. I know I'm not very special. I went to a public school. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but I've always have been all in to my level, my potential. And I've learned how to accept myself. And once you accept yourself, the last place you want to be is just in here. I mean, it's kind of boring once you accept yourself, and you just want to open yourself to the world. And it's just like that clamshell opening. And I know that we all like to think that we open ourselves to the world, but, you know, we have to put effort there. And but if we do open ourselves to the world, we realize the abundance of the information, all of our interests. We're surrounded by all of our interests, anything that we're curious about. And it's just to focus on those interests. And so my practice, when I made the work that's out front, you know, I focused on my interests. I love gazing balls. You know, I love the idea of perspective. I love the idea of multiple perspectives. And but in following these types of interests, things always become very metaphysical. And I know all of us here in this room, we've experienced this when we follow our interests, when we're following our passions, and we're really focusing on those passions, time and space bend. And that's why I'm here today. That's why I woke up this morning, went to my studio. That's what I'm interested in. And, you know, it happens. And it does let us participate in different dimensions.
I'm so glad you brought up gazing balls because, of course, I want to talk about that. But first, I want to say it's sort of shocking for somebody like you to say, I'm not that special in this room. There may be some dissenting opinions to that. But I wanted to ask you to drill down on that a little bit more. As you establish a public profile as an artist, and there are expectations and reactions to your work, what sort of a impact does that have on the process, knowing that there is that visibility on the other side?
You know, the reason that I bring up about not being special is to bring down hierarchy. Because, you know, we're faced with hierarchy in everything, and there's no place for hierarchy. And especially within culture. I mean, culture is nothing more than our biology interacting with our environment and being affected by it. I mean, absorbing from it, interacting with it, being changed by it, and then in return, changing our environment. And that's culture, breathing, right now, just here that we're breathing, bringing in the world, right? Bringing in the oxygen, exhaling, putting out carbon dioxide. That's culture. This back and forth. That's all that culture is. It's not this high. There's nothing that is the correct way, the wrong way. It just is. And it's that interaction. And, the color of the chair, that's culture, the clothes, your shirt, Eric, the way the light's just reflecting here, that is culture. So the idea to remove hierarchy, and when hierarchy's removed, everything is here for empowerment, for our own empowerment, everything. And so what disempowers us is systems, and the idea of that something is required of us, that we already have something, perform in a certain manner. We don't have to do anything other than to be. And of course, we have the essence of our future. That kind of gives us the excitement. I met this gentleman one time at the Nobel Laureate week, and Eric Zeitgik, I think I'm pronouncing the last name correctly. No, Eric Betzik. And Eric was a Nobel Prize winner for chemistry. And we were having a conversation, and we were talking, and he said to me, life is an illusion. It's just a chemical chain reaction. And that was the first time that I was ever presented with this type of idea. And, Steven Pinker, I know The Blank Slate, but this was the first time that I came across that, the idea that life is, it doesn't exist other than this animated chemical chain reaction, that it's an illusion. And I think it's kind of interesting to speak about that here in this theater, because I think that our excitement in life is that we're waiting for that next frame. We're waiting for that next reaction. That's what takes us into our future. And so it's almost like thinking of the cells of or a frame of each film.
I want to take that one step further on the subject of gazing balls. They are very cinematic in the sense that we look at movies for a reflection of the world, and it so often forces us to think of ourselves at the same time. It does feel like it has a similar dynamic. You've talked about sort of admiring gazing balls from a very young age, but was there a certain moment in time where you realized that they weren't just pretty, but they were, in a way, your new muse, something you could actually integrate into your art?
I think, as a child, I always enjoyed yards. I enjoyed being in a yard. I enjoyed laying in the grass and rolling over and looking at the sky and just, this is great. Roll over, smell the grass. So if I think of like a gazing ball, I think of a lawn ornament. I think of, again, in a way, going after hierarchy, because it is something that is so accessible, and at the same time it is so generous. Somebody to put a gazing ball in their yard, you walk by, you drive by. I mean, the generosity that they are showing you, because that ball, it's showing you as much as it can where you are in the universe. Almost 360 degrees. It's reflecting, and everything is dependent on you. If you move a little bit, your reflection's changing. But the beauty of that, where something can be so intimate as in the yard, and at the same time can represent everything. It can represent the vastness of the universe. It can be everything.
Really incredible to hear the way you break it down, because it's true. The longer that you stare at these things, the deeper the experience becomes. And I also feel that with your work, the longer that someone spends with each individual work, the more they start to see different elements that sort of link together. And so, on that note, I wanted to bring up that you had a major retrospective a little over 10 years ago at the Whitney. And I thought it was an incredible experience to walk through that museum because, like a lot of people, I knew some of your work, some of the better known works, but I hadn't seen the full scope of it. And to see it all kind of come together was fascinating to see the entire body of work in that way. What was that like for you, having gone through these different journeys as an artist, to have it all in one place like that?
Um, Eric, I enjoyed very much the experience. It was, I guess, 12 years ago, which is quite some time. But it was nice because I was able to have, I guess it was about 4 decades of work, having worked from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, 2000, actually 5 decades. And so, and to be able to have the different works together. I just want to go back to the gazing bowl just for one moment. And because when you were speaking, I was thinking, I think that I love the reflection of the gazing ball because it's the light. It's completely dependent on light. And just like all life is dependent on life, at least our life that we're dealing with. I know there's some life that could be at the bottom of the ocean or just it doesn't need light. But dealing with our biology, we need light. And the reflective quality, just as I was speaking before about culture, it's about reflection, something coming in and then going back out. I think it's kind of interesting being here in the theater and thinking about the screen and dealing also with the reflective light. I always thought the myth of narcissist is such kind of a negative myth when, the idea to know thyself, the myth should be to know thyself. It should be not that to gaze and to think and contemplate about oneself as being negative. Now, they take self-reflection into this self-love and as in a negative way. Instead of self-love, that you can accept yourself, accept your own being, and then so that you have the confidence to accept that you're able to accept other people, that you can open yourself to the world. But the myth of narcissism, as soon as you bring up reflection, and if you look in philosophy, it's probably the most often used word, reflection, reflect. And so, but soon as people start to practice, in a way, reflection or think about reflection, a lot of times they'll like to bring up the myth of narcissists. And I think the involvement with reflection can be really misunderstood.
So I have to ask you about one of your best known reflective surfaces that you put out in the world, which is the concept of the balloon dog. It's just so amazing, not only because it's fun to look at these things, to walk around them and take them in, but because pretty much everyone can grasp it, including, my toddler and somebody who's many years older. So that level of accessibility seems very key to how those works that you've done have sort of had such currency for so long. Did you have a sense of that they would be as impactful as they were, and that they would be received the way that they were?
I always just follow my interests, so I'm very intuitive. And so the balloon dog and the some of the balloon animals really come out of my celebration series. I worked with inflatables before, and back in the 70s, and in the 80s I worked with basketballs, and I worked with vacuum cleaners in the early 80s that dealt with air. But I always liked the inflatable because of thinking of us as humans, of our balloon-like quality. We take a breath, That's kind of a symbol of life's energy. And, you know, our last breath is a symbol of death. And so, in creating a balloon dog, I wanted to create something that was archetypal and something that could have a sense of related to our biology today, but at the same time that we could feel through biological memory a connective aspect to our past. And I wanted it to be mythic on a scale of, even though it's a dog, like a Trojan horse. And so I just created the piece. It's intuitive. But when I think about it, I think what I was trying to get at is that a balloon dog is very much like thinking of somebody, Paleolithic times possibly, looking at their kill. Somebody hunting, looking at the kill, noticing that the gases are expanding in the intestine, in the stomach, and thinking, you know, I could do something with that. And they would, you know, take the intestine, squeak, 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 and they would make something like the balloon dog, but that they would be able to embed the meaning that would have relevance to the rest of the community, that they could in some way have a ritual around. You know, because it's intestine, you know, we can relate to our own biology, that it comes from a profound place within. You know, they didn't know about, you know, the genes and the DNA to have a dialogue about profoundly within the body, but to deal with intestine, we're dealing with something that has meaning to us, that we can be able to make something to embed this type of relevance of biological past, something that is importance about being alive.
Listening to you talk, it's fascinating how much a lot of your sort of psychological process really does correlate with the art that you make. And I think there's something fascinating about kind of the siloed nature of the creative process, that an artist comes up with an idea and they work on their own to achieve that idea, maybe with a team, maybe not. Filmmaking, because we're in a movie theater, I think it's interesting to look at the contrast, which is generally known as a very collaborative art form. Your family reminded me beforehand, you do have a movie credit to your name, which is Milk. So I'm curious, if you've been on movie sets and you have a sense of that. What do you make of that contrast between the way that you express yourself and the way that other kind of media maybe require a bigger team involved?
Um, Eric, I mean, I think I understand the question, but you know, I focus on my work and I try to be at service to my work. I try to do things that help my platform as an artist. I want to communicate with people. I like people. Growing up, my grandparents on both sides of my family interacted with people. My dad's father was a bus driver and a trolley car driver, and very, very popular with people in New York. And my grandfather owned like a millinery store and different food stores, and always interacting with people. Our whole family, aunts, uncles, they were all merchants. And so I enjoy being with people. I enjoy communication, and I enjoy serving. And I don't want to be loved. I mean, I have a family. I really, my family, I hope that I can experience love, that I can love them, and that I can feel loved. But with the rest of the world, I want to serve in a different way. I want to try to be the best artist I can be. If I have anything, I think that I am all in. And I've tried to open myself up to the world. The things that I've spoken about here, about trying to be open to all experience and to try to remove anxiety. not to have a place for it in my life, by being able to practice acceptance, not to have any judgment about anything. And so these different methods, I think, have empowered me to be able have the confidence to try to serve and be all in. To first a dialogue, of course, always with my friends as artists growing up, but as my ability to spend more and more time just doing my own work, and somewhat the opportunities for the platforms of my work enlarged. It was also to be able again to serve in this dialogue, not to make what people want, uh, but I've been trying to make what I think hopefully can be of benefit to people, that somehow through my life experience I can communicate where I've experienced growth, where I've experienced opportunity, vastness, and a sense of feeling part of something greater than myself.
Yeah, off of that, one of the things that I think is really important to note is this theater closed in 2020. So just by virtue of being here and celebrating our new identity, we are in dialogue with the various challenges of the recent past. And I wanted to ask you about your relationship to that, how these cultural spaces have changed, or your relationship to them has changed as we've gone through such a dramatic couple of years, a period of time where we couldn't all be together, and now, of course, we are again.
Uh, it's wonderful to have spaces to be able to go to have experiences, places to go, to celebrate those experiences. Something that is not every day. It's not that it can't be, but it's just something that isn't experienced every day. So it has a special quality. But to be able to view films, to view these stories, which have very important, profound meanings to us. That's why we're watching these stories. That's why these narratives are important to us. That there's information that we help really helps ground us in life, or that we want to, in some manner, be aware of the conflict that we may have with different narratives. But storytelling is so profound. It's interesting how within film, once it's captured, I mean, the actors, the filmmaker, the people doing the lighting, everybody can experience that each take is different. It's never exactly always the same. Each take, the idea that the meaning is there. It's kind of back to like Platonism, where a chair is a chair, a table's a table. An actor saying a certain line and getting the main story across is there, but each take is unique, and it's the same if it's live theater or if we're observing music. Each instant is always just slightly different, but yet we're able as a whole to walk away with the appreciation of the uniqueness of each moment, but the story as a whole.
So before we wrap, having listened to all of this, I think is a great foundation for setting up this incredible work that we're so grateful you've made for us to set up our summer season. So can you tell us a little bit about where the idea came for this poster? People are going to see it momentarily, but what was sort of the initial germ of the idea, and how did it go from there?
Uh, I'm sure many of you here already know what a fan I am of the Rosens, and Samantha and AB. They've been so supportive over the years, and I was just talking to my family on the way out here, and I was saying about how much I've always enjoyed that. I would have my work, I would have my dog pool panties, beside this Twombly. Just incredible. So when I think of moments of my work and seeing it in relation to other artworks, I mean, that's one that is just forefront. So I wanted to make something that I felt hopefully they would feel was special, that it represented me at this moment. This is amazing. I mean, we are all here together at this moment in time, and it's so special. And I think sometimes we lose sight. We think about our lives in so many different ways, but we're here today, and it's fantastic. So I wanted to make something that I could show the Rosens that I love them, and I wanted to do something nice for the theater. So I wanted to go to the core of my interests, and to make something that I felt was stimulating, somewhat old school. I did something that was a lenticular because I wanted to involve the viewer, that it was dependent on them. If they drive by, things will change. If they walk by, if they're at different distances. So I wanted to, and also celebrate this amazing theater.
Well, we hope you come back and see some movies too, anytime. So let's go see Jeff's beautiful work. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you so much for everything.